Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast. Ahead of the Galway Film Fleadh, we are chatting with director Grace Dyas, writer Shannon Welby, and writer and co-director Aisling Byrne about their wonderful short films. So first up, thank you guys so much for coming and chatting with us. It's a very exciting time. Your films are about to screen at the Galway Film Fleadh. First up, I'm going to go through you and call on you one by one. And just say, are you okay to tell me a little bit about yourself and your film, if that's all right? So I'm going to just do it in order. Aisling, if you can go first.
Thanks, Gemma. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me. I am a theatre maker and a filmmaker based in Kildare. I am also the founder and the artistic director of an arts organisation called Run of the Mill, and we do a lot of work kind of platforming learning disabled talent and performers and artists with intellectual disabilities. My film in Galway is called Misread, and it's co-directed with the wonderful Sinead O'Loughlin, and it was a film I wrote for the Ardon RTE Short Film Commission, and it tells the story of two brothers who think they have very little in common, but get to know each other a little better on a kind of a daily commute to college. It's going to be screening in Irish Shorts 4 as part of the Fleadh in, I think, the Town Hall Theatre at 10 a.m. on Friday.
Oh, and it's so gorgeous. It's just a really beautiful, lovely story. I'm going to ask you a little bit about that scheme. Actually, we're going to come to funding after this. I'm going to ask you a little bit about that scheme in a while, so keep that in your head. And Grace.
So my name is Grace Dyas. I'm an artist and an activist, and I'm making work predominantly in film at the moment, but I made a lot of work in theatre in the past. And yeah, my film is called Waiting Day. It was written by Lynn Rowan and produced by Alfonso Films. Claire Byrne produced it for Alfonso Films. And it's the story of a woman called Rachel and her two kids, and just kind of follows them for a day while they wait for their social welfare payment to come through. So it kind of captures poverty in working class communities and that kind of thing. I've always been made to wait for everything, and how people pass the time, I guess. So they have they struggle to kind of make ends meet on that final day every week. So the kids kind of call it the only day that feels like it has more than 24 hours in it.
It's really beautiful, and I think you capture the humanity in every character. There's even their father. I think that relationship there, that kind of very fractured but very loving relationship, is really beautifully done as well. When is the film screen?
The 15th at 12 p.m. in the Town Hall.
And Shannon, onto a lovely lighthearted comedy.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm a screenwriter from the northwest of Ireland, Donegal. I'm sure you all know it. And great part of the country. Big supporter of it. I came to screenwriting in a roundabout way. I didn't like have a kind of upbringing surrounded by anything except near cinemas and film for late at night watching films. But then went down and studied in Dublin. I was hoping to study film, but I was given a strict no, you better do something sensible.
It never works. It never works.
Exactly, reverse psychology. And then I went and studied business and ended up working in film distribution, so kind of roundabout came into the film industry that way. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I was watching an amazing film and I reached out to the screenwriter and I just said, look, like, because I saw some of the work they'd done, and I said, look, how do you do this? How do I learn it? Like, I'd always written short stories and prose and all that, but I was like, how does one write for film and TV? How does that work? And they sent me the McKees and they gave me mentorship, like, and then I went on to study the master's in screenwriting for film and television at IADT then. So after that then as well, I moved to Tory Island, which brings me on to my short film, which is screening at the Fleadh, which is License for Nil. So it's set on Tory Island, which, for those who don't know it, it's the most remote inhabited island of Ireland. It's off Donegal. I'd gone out there to focus on my screenwriting. And when I was there, I just got really, really inspired by the character of the place, the people, the landscape. Like, it's really just not like any other world. So yeah, and we're going to chat more about it. But the comedy License for Nil is going to be screening at the Town Hall in Galway on Thursday, the 13th of July at 12 noon.
I'd be like, so I'm just gonna dig in a little bit because it's such a good comedy. You really capture like the lawlessness and the character of the locals, like that anti-authority, any you don't tell us what to do attitude is there, and in spades. And then you've your fish out of water character in Tiny James delivering like the kind of straight man for once, like that kind of against its kind of wacky sidekick. So it's just it's like a fun frolic, and it's so zany and good crack. So tell me a little bit about developing it and then how funding came aboard.
Yeah, 100%. And I should have started out by giving the kind of one-liner on it as well for anybody listening. But it's basically about Curtis, who's this new TV license inspector, and he is so delighted to be in this job, to be finally in something authoritative that he'll get respect in. And it all goes downhill when he's matched with this wayward license inspector and sent off to this wayward island. But yeah, in terms of developing and how it came about, so I'd moved out to Tory, so I left my job in Dublin because, to be honest, I just kind of came to the realization that I needed to just try and give more time and make it work with the writing. And I was like, right, well, actually, I was on a holiday out in Tory Island for a couple of days, truth be told, and they were like, "Oh, geez, you're lovely. Would you not stay? Like, would you not stay on the island, like, and marry my brother and do this?" I didn't marry anybody, but I did stay. I stayed for a year. And basically, like, I'm developing a TV series set in Tory Island as well, which is like my baby. And but while I was there, I really wanted to do something on the island because I was chatting to a good few of the locals who mentioned that there's a lot of kind of characters who really come across as really vibrant in person as well. Um, and they had mentioned that like theater was a big thing on the island, say a decade before that, and there was somebody on the island who would, do the plays with them and like direct and all that. That had kind of gone downhill since the director had left. And I was just like kind of had the idea in my head that I'd love to do a short film. I didn't have any funding except for I had like a €1,200 grant from Donegal County Council,
Wow.
which was like an artist grant. So it was like you're survive for the year. So I took that money away and I started off with that, and I just put it out there and I said, like, look, I have this script which I wrote while I was living on the island, comedy, and I put a GoFundMe and I said, look, I'm just looking to do this film. Like, there's a wealth of actors and talent and beautiful landscapes and crack here. And I just want to make this film. And then at that stage, maybe it raised through the GoFundMe about another $3,000, which was really amazing. Like, the support was insane. And at that point, then I reached out to Shane Robinson, our director, who was a DOP/cinematographer on my first short, and he's a workhorse, and he also teaches acting. So for somebody to come in and to work with non-actors as well, it was invaluable having Shane, and he is an absolute workhorse. He's so talented. But I'm just so grateful to him that he was like, yeah, I'll come to this island I've never been to and do a recce and jump on board this script and work with this full cast of Islanders, bar one trained actor, Tiny James, as you mentioned. But yeah, so that's
It's
how it came
great.
about. I just funded more from there. Yeah.
Because he's so funny normally, and he's always like that kind of real dry humor, and then to see him like just be so earnest, it's very sweet. It's a beautifully written character. So that's very interesting. And then Grace, yours was a focus short, wasn't it? So how did you and Lynn end up paired together? How did you guys kind of cross paths? And it's great to see Alfonso, like everything gorgeous that I see, they have their name attached to it.
I know Lynn, gone way back years and years and years. We're good friends. And then I suppose Alfonso reached out to her about her book, I think. And then Claire is directing Lynn's feature at the moment. So there's a kind of creative relationship there. And I suppose they just were chatting about who to direct it. And my name kind of came up, and then they just got onto me, and we put the application in. Just lovely experience kind of working with them. The three of them are amazing in Alfonso. So it was great then to actually get the money in the end of the process, and then to be able to make the piece. And obviously the funding from Screen Ireland just makes such a big difference, like in terms of being able to kind of fill all the different roles that you'd want to fill on a set. So like, you know, my previous films, they were all kind of funded in different kind of ways, like kind of pigeon funding here, there, different kind of things. So it was great to just be able to go, okay, what's the standard? Like how does, like, because I think Screen Ireland try and get the focus shorts to be produced the way a feature would be produced. So you get kind of sense of that, like, you know, so we had every possible department and every possible role kind of covered. And yeah, you get to kind of work with like all these really amazing people, and kind of got to chat to loads of different people about maybe taking on the different roles, and then go with the people that had the most kind of connection with artistically and stuff. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience to be doing that work under the Screen Ireland kind of banner. And I know they were very supportive as well of Alfonso, but like I didn't produce it, so which is unusual for me. I wasn't involved in producing.
You get to just put on your creative director hat and really kind of
Yeah.
dig into it. But the performances are great. I'll actually kind of circle back to this, because I actually want to ask about everyone's sort of way that they deal with actors. But it was just a beautiful, deft hand with regards to how it's portrayed, and like even that like humor dappled through it. It was a beautifully written script. It was beautifully realized. So it's lovely to see that support being given as well from Film Ireland from Screen Ireland to those kind of just authentic and woman-led stories, you know, like it's the real.
Well, the class side of it is really important as well. Like I don't know any other project, you know, that was kind of written and directed by two working class women. Like I can't, you know, from years of kind of going to festivals and seeing kind of stuff like, that was funded by Screen Ireland, I guess that was kind of mainstream funded, like, so I think that's really important, like, because so much of working class culture is portrayed in film, and largely written by middle class men and middle class male directors, middle class male producers.
There's an authenticity that is undeniable, like, and a strength as well that I think is it's lovely really to see that on screen, and I want to see so much more of it. So hopefully this is like the next step to the feature. I always hear that about the focus shorts, like next up is like
Lynn's feature is shooting right now, so that's really cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aisling.
I suppose like similar to Grace has had such a commitment to platforming authentic working class voices for so many years in the arts, and long been an admirer of your work, Grace, as you know.
Likewise, Aisling.
Oh, stop it.
We know each other.
But I in a similar sense, I have a long-standing collaborative relationship in my own community with an ensemble of actors with intellectual disabilities. It's been a big passion of mine for years to try and carve out kind of collaborative art making methodologies that will support a group of very under and misrepresented people, to have, you know, to be authentically represented in theatre and in film, particularly because I do believe that like culture shifts thinking, and you know, I think that it's you have to see it to be it, and all of those, you know, those adages that are coming to the fore and in a meaningful way now in recent times. So Misread was kind of born of a lot of that practice. My narrative short debut, I suppose I kind of came to filmmaking via my work with Run of the Mill, and now I've just fallen in love because my background would be theatre. But Headspace was my narrative short debut last year that I wrote for an ensemble of learning disabled performers, and Mark Smith, a long-time collaborator of mine, and a very talented performer with Down syndrome. He consulted on the script, helped me to write it, played the lead role. But there was one particular role that was very challenging to cast in that film for a myriad of reasons I won't get into because I'm here to talk about a different film. But we went outside of our ensemble of Run of the Mill for that role, and we found this incredible acting talent, Daniel Ryan. I'd heard of Daniel, and he had like a list of screen credits as long as your arm, and he was attending an inclusive theatre group very similar to us at Run of the Mill called Blue Diamond in Dublin. And it definitely was a role that required someone with screen experience, and it was a role that called for an actor with Down syndrome. So Dan stepped in, and he was so incredible. Danislavski, as I called him, he is like such a mesmerizing performer. I sort of said to him after that experience, I said, if I wrote something for you, Daniel, like I want to write a vehicle for your talent, like something that could, you know, that you can be the lead in. Because a lot of the actors that I collaborate with in my practice at Run of the Mill would get access to casting opportunities to be somebody sipping a cup of tea on the periphery of someone else's life, as opposed to being, you know, the center, being centered in the narrative. So Dan said, well, yeah, you write it and I'll be in it, kind of thing. And very shortly after we finished post on Headspace, the Ardán RT Short Film Commission came out. So it was actually a script, Misread was a script that I wrote directly responsive. You know the way sometimes you have a script in a drawer, whereas this was really, I'm going to challenge myself now to write something for Daniel for this particular scheme. So that was kind of how Misread came about. I wrote it for the commission, and it was a similar process to Focus, in the same sense as there was, you know, interviews, and we were shortlisted and we pitched to a panel. It was myself and Arcade Film, who I've collaborated with on all of my film work there. Dan Keane and Killian Walters, amazing creative producers, cinematographers, editors, you name it. And the scheme called for producer, writer, director trios. So I saw that as an opportunity, as opposed to a, you know, I certainly I am interested in directing my own work, but I was like thinking, who is some filmmaker I really look up to, who I think I could learn a lot from. So that's how the co-direct with Sinead O'Loughlin came about. She'd also become a part of the wider Arcade Film family. So that was how the film came to be. And I suppose story-wise, it's a narrative about Daniel is attending further education college. His brother hasn't been in his life very much because he's recently released from prison. His brother actually has, you know, undiagnosed learning difficulties of his own, dyslexia, and has struggled with reading all his life, but is very it has shaped his personality in so many ways, and a lot of the life choices he's made. And on this daily commute to the further education college, they realise that they've completely misread one another, really. And the non-disabled brother, Gary, who's played by Craig Connolly, is actually quite astounded to realise that his brother with Down syndrome can read, and they sort of have this, they develop this connection via that discovery.
And it's beautiful. I think you captured the humanity in them both, the sort of that tense relationship, and it's explored so beautifully with the subtext as well. And I think that's that kind of subtlety throughout it is really kind of heartwarming, and how nothing in so many spaces is explicitly said. Was this workshopped with or Ardán, or?
So I wrote the script. I would always, particularly if I would be writing scripts, whether in theatre and film, where I'm going to work with, you know, where I'm writing it for a particular actor, and particularly an actor with an intellectual disability, I would be it's why it's important for me that I direct that work, as well as that I would take a very flexible approach to the script in terms of allowing the actor space to say it in their way and do it in their way, and, you know, take their own approach. So we didn't workshop it as such, but I had the script written prior to the commission. Ardán worked in some mentorship for all of us, for the directors, producers, the writers. So I had the opportunity to do some sessions with Mark O'Halloran, which was really incredible. And the small steers that Mark gave me kind of blew the whole thing wide open. But it was quite funny because we were on a Zoom with Daniel yesterday, actually, talking about it. And the interviewer asked Dan, you know, did you have to audition for the role? And he was kind of like, no, darling, this was written for me, you know. So what we did is we didn't workshop it, but we did chemistry test for the other actors. So Dan came into Ardán, or in Arcade Towers, as we call it, for the day, and, you know, a string of some of Ireland's finest acting talent on a revolving door came in, and it was sort of a, like, you know, Daniel, like, who will I award this honor to? But no, you know, jokes aside, we definitely wanted to give consideration to who'd have the right chemistry with Daniel, who Daniel clicked with. I'd be very passionate about relaxed, inclusive sets, like rewriting the rule book on how we make films to be more inclusive. What's good for the few is good for the many. So for us, that was everything. It had to be an actor who, you know, could really work well with Daniel, and they could work well together and, you know, help each other in the process.
That's captured so well. Like they have such a glorious warm chemistry, and that kind of hesitancy, and then like that reluctant kind of like cracking open. It's beautiful. Like it's a really, really beautiful thing. So that actually answers the question that I was going to ask Grace and Shannon later, so be prepared for that, because I did want to talk about how you kind of elicit those relationships to your actors, but first I actually wanted to kind of go right back and see how you did the creative collaborations, because I also feel like they're very interesting. How does it work to be a co-director on this, and kind of and kind of be in that space with Sinead?
It was incredible. Like, it was probably the best thing about it. Like, Sinead is just a mighty, and I sort of had the response of being like, why haven't I been doing this? You know, like, we were laughing in the process of, like, you know, not to stereotype, but we were wondering if male co-directorships are quite the same. You know, we were like passing each other an antihistamine from our pockets so that we wouldn't have to come off the monitor, or fetching each other a breakfast roll, or, you know, like, so that, you know, it was the ultimate tag team, and there was so much care in our collaboration that it's certainly something I would do again. I like, the co-direct was something that we arrived at because the scheme called for it, but it was such an example of it, with this really massively mutually enriching opportunity. Sinead felt that even if I'd asked her as a screenwriter, will you direct this for me, as she put it, she knows that I have a bit of an experience and expertise in terms of working with, you know, talent where there might be access requirements and disabled performers. And so she was sort of saying, why would I ignore that expertise when it can be an asset to the process? It was just a real partnership. And it almost felt like two heads were better than one. It's so fantastic to have that second opinion, that validation of your thoughts and choices. And, you know, we were very lucky in that sense. We just I think we put the groundwork in. I think if you are going to do a co-direct, and time is so of the essence when it comes to a shoot, like, to have really done that preparatory work in the film, that sitting down, that talking about style and tone and what we want from it, and really considering every choice. It forced us to do that in advance, which I think is a good thing to do anyway.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I'm go to you, Shannon. So you have written this, you're producing it and sort of financing it as well. So, and it's also in your neck of the woods. So you're bringing your director to you to work on it. Tell me a little bit about how that forms, and how you guys kind of create the film together.
Yeah, like, I can't speak to obviously the eliciting the performance from the actors, like, because that's all down to Shane. But I guess, like, kind of going back to like what Aislinn's saying there about like having a collaborative set and like a nice environment like that, like no truer or no more necessary than being on an island like out off the coast of Donegal. And like, to be honest, like, because we were on such a tight budget and everything, like, in terms of the who, in terms of the crew getting that together, like, we're really like really delighted that we got such talented crew to come out to the island. And I think a big draw for a lot of them who had been working on like big budget stuff on the mainland were like, oh, I get to go off to this little island for a couple of days. And like, it's actually like they were kind of drawn into the story of the place as well, which was really lovely. And like, everybody was paid as well. We made sure that, bar myself and Shane, we didn't take payment, but like the rest of the crew, like, we paid them for the work, albeit not enough that they deserve, like, and how much more they should be deserving of. But in like this short, like, I think that it really comes down to kind of like a community effort, like, is the kind of two words for it. And that, like, it, like, encapsulating crew, encapsulating the actual community of Tory Island. Like, I was writing up a list earlier this morning before the Zoom call, because I was like, oh god, like, I better remember like all the people, like, geez, I need to, like, you know, like, you can't be naming them all off to say thank you, but just all the things to kind of tip the hat to. And like, I could never sit here and tell you how many favors were done, like, whether it was, you know, the one lad I went to school with who drove a suitcase up from Sligo Sligo to Donegal town so we could use a briefcase from a secondhand charity shop so that we could use it in the film.
That you throw into the sea. Spoiler alert.
Exactly. And then we retrieved it just to
oh, who had to go in and get it? Oh my God.
No harm to the environment in making this. And even like reaching out to like local Donegal community groups to like ask for, you know, any locals who have a rabbit who would be, you know, if they're comfortable in their own space. Like, so we got a lady who let us out basically her entire shed to film in, and her rabbits and her daughter on hand to make sure the rabbit was comfortable. And then like from having, you know, like the local musicians getting up on a Sunday morning, like getting involved as extras, like, and that's no easy thing, I have to say. Sunday morning on Tory Island is usually a very quiet time. So, but all these like accumulation of favors, I think that it kind of speaks to the spirit of hospitality, and that was a big comment back from the crew as well. And a big hat off to the crew for embracing that and really kind of like just diving in and understanding the environment and loving it and thriving in it.
And I'm hearing so many stories about people in Donegal just like going, here's the keys to my house. Do you know, like they seem to be really open to people filming there.
100%. Like, and it's like, you know, it's not like, because we can take it for granted, like after we get to go on a couple of short sets or on a couple of sets, and but like when they see like the big lights, you know, coming in, and not, like I'm not saying everyone doing it like this, but for like a lot of rural places in Ireland, 100%, like they're not seeing the level of productions that, you know, Dublin or Wicklow or the likes are seeing, and like it's opening up these kind of doors to, I suppose, rural communities, and like things like the RAP fund that are there, that encouragement to go out and go local, like, and like, yeah, that's great. Like, I'm glad to hear you that the hospitality Donegal is known as it always is, like, but it's just like a collaborative effort, as filmmaking is, as making a short is, like it's a group effort. But definitely in this, for this, it was like mad levels of collaboration.
And as a writer working with your director, do you guys have long chats? Is it a case of you kind of have the script and then take off your writer hat and become the producer and say, all right, now how do we facilitate your aesthetic vision of this? Like, what does that conversation look like for you?
Yeah, like it would change from project to project. Like there's things I'm involved in at the minute where it's like very much like director involved from the get-go, or there's things where it's like I hand over the script and then hands are off collaborative. Like I kind of bend and flow with what's right for the project, to be honest, and I'm like very open to that. But I guess in this case with Shane, like he, like his enthusiasm as a director, where he like came out to the island to do that recce like within 2 weeks of like our first discussion about it, to like to really get to know the place, to get to know the people, to you know, to really like block it out and see the space. So like that vision was absolutely, that dedication from him as a director was absolutely necessary. But yeah, like I guess that, yeah, like I was like sending him photos like and doing the recce with him and collaborating with him because I knew the space and I'd lived there for so long, and saying, look, there's this woman, I think we should knock on her door for this role, like, and whatnot. And just like because of the shape that this one took, because it was my kind of local place, so I've been living in, that I know well, like, yeah, it was much more collaborative this time around. Yeah.
That's that's so lovely. I kind of think that is what it is all about, isn't it? It's like everyone kind of working together to get like these mad ideas that we have in our mind into reality and into something that you can like really tangible see. Like when you think about it, it's just a strange concept and you get everybody on board to chip in, but it's kind of beautiful. And that's the thing that changes, as Aisling was saying, like changes hearts and minds as well in a way, and probably as well, like it gives people this glorious insight into what that region is like and those characters. So it's wonderful. It's so lovely to watch. And so I'm going to go, Grace. So tell me a little bit about getting on board with the focus short, working with Lynn. How do you realize that vision? Do you guys talk about characters? Do you just take it and run with it? How does that work for you?
How did we go about it? I suppose, I don't know, like it's hard because me and Lynn, you know, we talk every day anyway, so it was kind of like, you know, I knew like straight away when I read it, I just knew to suss with it, like, you know, and but there was stuff that as we got into kind of art department and production design and kind of stuff like that, there was things that I wanted to be like, you know, do you think Rachel would have rose hangers in her closet? Like, and Lynn would be like, no, or she'd be like, yeah, of course she does. You know what I mean? So it was stuff like that like, no, she doesn't.
as the answer to that question. But I suppose it was like, because we're trying to kind of, it was really true to art stuff. Maybe that's because I've always done all of that myself before, like costume, production design, everything. I would have done all of that. So it's the first time you're kind of collaborating with people about the visual representation of, and it's a lot of it's to do with class as well. So the kind of figuring out those tricky kind of negotiations, people who aren't of the world, who are doing their best to really honor it and show it really well, but sometimes, like stuff about like what brands, like where the James character, like what he would be wearing, like that suddenly became a really big socioeconomic discussion. Do you know what I mean? Like, and there had to be kind of mutual kind of education around it and stuff. And so like that, there would be moments like that where I'd go back to Lynn and be like, I think this, and she'd be like, yeah, of course, you know what I mean? Or, so because that kind of stuff was kind of tricky. Then there was stuff, she did some rewrites with Screen Ireland, and obviously the same thing would come up again, like, so we kind of supported each other around that as well. Like we'd kind of sit down on a Zoom one day and she was like, well, what do you think of this? And I was like, well, of course it's okay, because we know this world, do you know what I mean? And we know what would happen in it. Whereas that might not be so apparent to somebody who hasn't kind of lived it, so all of that stuff, like for me, the most juicy stuff in the production of it was all around kind of class, like, and it's obviously, it's such a big part of Lynn's work as an activist as well, like, and my own. So it was like, we're kind of tuned into that anyway,
And there's you beautiful production designs like that plastered over a hole in the wall, the kicked in door thing, where you really just got that sense like this is the aftermath, and there's so much empathy there, but it's like like she's at the end of her tether, like you actually, but he's not demonized. And I thought like, and all that was done without saying it, and I thought, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that was, Claire Connor worked in the locations as well. Like that was a huge part of my kind of visual vision for it, was that it would just make it as real as possible and let that do the work, like, so Angela even was working in London, so the production designer, and then when she got to the set, she just was like, we don't need to do any of the things we talked about, like really, like, like we kind of wanted to paint the walls at one point, and we had different kind of ideas. Like the script actually had very specific colors in it for all of the scenes, which was kind of really cool. But then when we got there, we were like, actually, and that again, that would be where me and Lynn would be tic-tacking, because I, as a writer, like, I'm never gonna just go, right, if it says yellow walls and we haven't discussed that, they have to be yellow, do you know what I mean? So there would be kind of a good bit of back and forth then around kind of that and stuff, like, because I was very, I suppose, as a screenwriter myself, like I was like, she wouldn't have written that for no reason, do you know, that kind of way, which was kind of tricky. Then I think the wider kind of team were a bit like, you're the director, do what you want. And I was like, no, I have to go and call Lynn and discuss this with her. But that comes down to representation as well, like, you know what I mean, and how delicate and important all of that is, like, so yeah, it was amazing that we had people in Bluebell who were willing to kind of give us their houses, to work in, and that stands for the relationships that Claire and Lynn have in that community, like, but it was like, you'll take whatever story you take from that, you know what I mean, and like that might not necessarily be anything about James, because we all live in houses that other people have lived in, and it's not always about that particular story, like, we had our own kind of backstory for James, that we talked about on set or whatever, like, but you'll take whatever you take from it, like, do you know what I mean, like, I just thought Jordan and David were unbelievable as a couple, and as well, like, they had met each other in Frank Berry's I Used to Live Here, which is actually the film that started them both in acting, so that was unbelievable for them to reunite on this. And then the two kids, Kyla and Harper, obviously this was their first film, and Jordan and David were able to like really relate to them and go, like, they're the same age, like 12, like for Kyla, like they were like, this is mad, you're in a film, like this is what you need to do and everything. So that was all just really beautiful to watch all of that kind of play out. Like
such chemistry, such charisma. Like you just, and people are like, oh, don't work with kids, but like really, that relationship and the banter and the kind of back and forth. I just think it was just so heartwarming and just sold it. Like it isn't this like maudlin sad thing. There's so much joy and beauty in life in the characters and promise, and it's going like, you know, like the cheekiness, the pure cheekiness.
but it's that's what I love about Lynn's writing so much, is like it just pours out of her, like that's just real, you know, that's just like, as we were shooting, you know, like there was women waiting to get into the post office, like, do you know what I mean, and they were literally doing the same thing, like and I think that kind of like modeling thing that comes from people of different backgrounds telling these stories that they don't have a right to, really, do you know what I mean? So like that's kind of where that comes from. But my experience of living in the world as a working class woman has never been modeling. It's been tragic and sad, and like you couldn't write this, you couldn't make it up. If I put it into a film, nobody would believe me, do you know what I mean? But it's always been full of vibrancy and life and work, you know, like that's the big thing, is the value is of hard work, like, and that's what's so disturbing about loads of these schemes and loads of these government policies, the neoliberal policies. They removed the right to work from working class people, actually, with their policies, shutting down factories, shutting down docks, you know, go back as long as you want or whatever. And then they put people in these waiting traps in all these schemes, and then they complain about how they behave, like when things don't, when they're being basically killed, like for structural violence or whatever. So like that's the kind of, like, there's nothing surprising to me that it's funny, like, you know what I mean, or that people are having good crack. Like there's nothing about that. When I read the script that I thought, oh, this is a really original thing that Lynn has done. I thought more so like this is real life. Like
I just want to go back into how these, after you've shot, how to structure them in the edit. Like, do you find that there's nuances that you didn't notice? Or I'll stick with you, Grace, if that's okay. Do you kind of reevaluate? Do you go stick to exactly the script, or do you kind of find a new path once you have your footage?
This was such a clean script. Like it was so good. Like it was just like easy, refreshing, you know, like there was very little extra creative work for me to do. I'd be used to kind of working as an author, and kind of, you know, everything was kind of me working on it, like, you know. So this was incredible to just be able to be of service to Lynn, you know, and to be of service to the team, and, you know, to my sort of vision for Rachel's kind of world really came alive on set, like, you know what I mean, which is kind of how I've always worked with actors, like but in the edit, yeah, like I guess because before, like when I've been in the edit, like it's just me and like all the people I've hired, like, you know, that kind of way. And I've had like one sort of relationship before, like with Screen Ireland, like where Rua Red, they were commissioner of my last film, A Mary Magdalene Experience, so they had some sort of say. But with Screen Ireland, they have quite a big input. And they will look at different passes and they'll give very detailed notes.
Wow.
So it was, you know, I know Elaine had been through that process with them before, with the script, before they signed off on the script, and they do kind of approve the script, you know, like it's not, it becomes less of a creative pursuit when you're working with Screen Ireland in a way, because they are funding it, and obviously they're, with the focus shorts, it's a training ground really for a feature. So they're bringing in the kind of business end of making films, the kind of commercial kind of side of it, and they're going like, is this clear? You know, like, will the audience be in any way, like, you know, like when I'm making my own work, it's like I want people to sit forward in the chair and be a bit confused. Like that is actually what I want. I think that's much more interesting.
You don't want to put a bow on it, like.
You say again?
You don't want to put a bow on it, like. You don't want to make it too.
You don't want to speak to them, but I think with Screen Ireland, they're leaning more towards, you know, that an audience will really receive this as a well-made piece of film which I think is an amazing thing. And I learned a lot from that process as well. And Claire, who produced it, also edited it, God love her, but she's an amazing editor. So it was really great to have her, because she'd be on set and everything and she understood everything. But yeah, like there was times when it was like all of us feeding into the three Alfonso people, the three women who run the company, then like the Screen Ireland producer, myself, and then Claire with her editor hat on as well. Like, do you know what I mean? So there was some like 2-second moments that were like a long discussion, like,
Wow. That's a lot of voices in a room, though, for you to, as a creative.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize that, or kind of, I mean, like, how do you kind of go, like, you, because sometimes I think when you get too much input, like I personally, like me, I get like, what? Like,
yeah,
when you're kind of getting it from all angles, from different points
for
of
me,
view.
it's like I'm used to that. Like Aisling and I will tell you, like you get that a lot in theatre, like, because it's such a collaborative art form and it kind of has to be. So you're kind of, as a director, you're used to hearing like 10 different opinions, and the artistic directors, the writer, whoever else, funders, reviewers sometimes, like, so you're used to kind of getting that and filtering it. And I'm always very clear on my vision and what I think and like my taste actually, and my kind of like thing. But what was great about this was that like I wasn't producing it, so it wasn't my company, I wasn't the producer, so I just was able to say at a certain point, I was able to go, this is my recommendation and you will have to do what you will with it. Do you know what I mean? And that left for, we can't always all agree. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think that was, I had to just really trust Alfonso that they were listening to the Screen Ireland feedback, listening to my feedback, and they were kind of going, right, well, ultimately, this is our film. Do you know what I mean? This is an Alfonso film, and we have to be comfortable with it, and we have to stand over it. And I think they made all the right decisions for them in their kind of way of working. So it was great for me to be like, not the general of the situation, like, like the lieutenant or whatever, if the army metaphor holds. Like I was somewhere like Screen Ireland at the top, then there's Alfonso and then there's me, like, do you know what I mean? So it was nice for me to go, I actually don't have to argue this point. All I have to do is go and let go and surrender to the highest possible good of the whole piece, because in my own work, like people who work with me will know, like I'm like, no, I'm like, this is mine. It has to be, it has to be mine. Whereas with this, it was a group of beautiful women, like, sharing things and having estrogen and like loving each other and hugging each other and all that kind of stuff. So you're able to kind of go, look, over to you, like I trust you, this is what I think. And like, when they make certain decisions, it's like really good parents, like where if you're grounded and you're like, I'm raging, I'm grounded, then you're like, oh no, but then I studied, so they're great, like,
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Like, I mean, it's the importance of fostering healthy collaboration, like that kind of real input.
There's 3 women at the helm of the company, like it's amazing.
And so nice to deal with. Sorry, Aisling. So tell me a little bit.
No, just really enjoying listening.
I know. It's fascinating to see that structure about the edit and about, did anything shift or change? And again, is Ardon, do they kind of come in and give feedback at this point as well?
Yeah, similar experience in terms of like, it was my first time getting a commission like that, which essentially Focus Shorts is as well, because my last short, Headspace, was funded via the Arts Council through, I know they don't traditionally fund film, but through kind of sort of an annual funding pot that Run of the Mill gets for projects. So kind of arts participation project. So it was my first time having that kind of thing that Grace talks about, where you'll send something back and there'll be a pass of notes and things like that. And I probably not, it's a smaller funding pot. It's Ardon RT. So there are 2 sets of notes coming away, but a very, very generous and helpful and, all of that kind of thing. In fact, I suppose there is that thing, I still like, I feel like I'm learning so much about film, and I was, a big thing for me has been realizing, I feel like theatre, certainly collaborative and contemporary theatre that Grace and I will both have a background in, it's a very democratized kind of making experience in many ways. So sometimes I'd say, make a suggestion. My first thought would always be to, what do you think? I'm always pulling the person beside me being like, do you agree? Or what's your opinion? And then I'm so used to that like a joke that arcade film would sometimes say, they would say, well, don't ask us, you're the director, that there's this tendency in film to be like, the director is like the top of the thing. And when you come from a theatre background where the playwright is absolutely king, that is so unusual to me. Like I couldn't believe that one of the films are like, it could be called like a film by Aisling Byrne. I'd be like, what do you mean? It's not like, if I didn't write that, it could still be called that. And it's very interesting unlearning, or certainly I don't, trying to like navigate the traditional structures and hierarchical structures of filmmaking has been interesting. So it was nice to hear Grace talk about that relationship with that naturally collaborative relationship with the screenwriter, and how you work in that way. But I suppose another big learning curve has been when you write and direct your own work, the compromises that might have to be made in terms of what you imagined and then what comes to fruition, having to kind of have your writer's hat on and your director's hat on. And certainly you'd be editing, and we would often we're lucky that our cinematographer Dan Keane on Misread was also the editor. So in some ways he's kind of editing in his head as he goes, because the biggest thing the notes from the funders are going to feed back on are, as Grace says, is the story clear? Like, are an audience going to be able to understand what's going on? I similarly don't love to infantilize or spoon feed an audience with work, and I like people to have questions and maybe not always get the easy answers, but the notes are usually quite helpful in terms of having that outside eye tell you in some way, as a narrative piece of work, does it make sense, I suppose, and is that clear? And so yeah, the notes were very, very helpful. But I have to say, in the experience with Aradan and RTE, it was very much these things must be left to the filmmakers. I think that was a direct quote from one of the things. It was like, I would encourage them to do this, but at the end of the day, it's your film, which is, it's nice because it's holding your hand and helping and giving you the little bit of tough love you need, but also at the end of the day, having that kind of respect that it is your piece of work. We actually made, and this kind of leads to a question I'd love to ask the others if time affords. We did a really drastic cut. I won't say what it was because it would spoil it for any podcast listeners. It would spoil it. But the film had a different ending. It actually had another scene that was an addendum, which made it quite clear, I felt, to the audience. Well, Sinead and I certainly felt, because we talked about potentially making the cut to the script with the arcade lads, and Sinead and I kind of stood firm and said, no, we think the ending is good, and it sort of lets the audience know what the fate of one of the main characters is.
And it's a very, oh no, it's lovely, and you know immediately like what it infers.
What it infers. But we had that kind of wrapped up with a little bit more of a bow in it, and it felt, when we went then and watched it in the final cut, and it went through about 4 drafts, before we decided to make that cut, and some more notes. And when we got a bit of feedback saying that it was sort of at times unclear, the ending was slightly unclear, or it was muddying the waters, shall we say, and it was trying to make it clearer what the fate of the original character was, but it was kind of maybe not doing it as clearly as we would have liked. We realised it felt a bit addendum-y, that the film could actually end sooner. So I feel really, really happy with the decision that was made. But a question I always love to ask others is, and the other cut that we had to make pre-production was to an S Club 7 song that was meant to originate, that was in my script. Unfortunately, Reach for the Stars was out of the reach of our budget.
Is that what it was going to be?
It was meant to be Reach for the Stars, the song of the star.
Like instead of the one that's there.
Yeah. Instead of the one that's there. But yeah,
damn licensing and copyright.
I know. So I always love to ask other filmmakers, like,
I would have recorded a cover for you.
We went down that road, but like 90s pop is watertight.
Yeah, you can't even cover it, can you not?
Rules. So it was very,
RTE, and also they won't let you break any rules.
there was a lot of that. Yeah, we had to be really careful. So and I have a habit of writing licensed music into my films. Like I think Arcade Films is going to stage an intervention soon if I don't stop. Like because I wrote a Joe Dolan song into Headspace that we managed to get the rights for. But I actually subsequently watched Kate Dolan's brilliant film You Are Not My Mother, and I was like, this is a thing.
Yeah.
It was the exact. I hadn't seen the film, and she had written that song in it as well. So I was like, we should start a very specific support group for people trying to get the rights to Joe.
You could actually have like
Whole Joe.
because it's very hard, and it
Very hard.
yeah, we had a similar thing like that. Lynn had written a very well-known song for the end of which is a really important moment in the film. Rachel is with the kids at the end, like, and we were trying to, there was a whole big story about it. One of the Alfonso people knew someone who knew the writer of the song and all, and there was loads of chats with Screen Ireland about it and everything, and then in the end we just couldn't get it, so we had to go with a song that was before 1910, I think was Emma came back to us and was like, something before 1910.
It's a whole thing, and I know Focus Shorts have done a big thing around it. Like it's as in kind of forewarning people when they apply, be careful you're not, I also wrote a Goosebumps book into that we did get licensing for. So our production designer did an amazing kind of knockoff of a sort of a point horror Goosebumps type book. But what I was wondering was there any major shift or change that you had to make to your films? Was there a darling you had to kill in terms of the difference between what your vision might have been for the film originally, with her as the writer, or the director receiving the script that just wasn't feasible in the end, or you just couldn't make it happen?
Yeah, like a good view on this one. Yeah, like because it was all just down to like everyone having an input and stuff. Do you know what I mean? And then different things that would have been more to my taste, but wasn't felt that they were communicating the story well enough, and different things like that. So there was actually a huge shift. From like day one of my first assembly of what I was into to like the final kind of piece that we got mixed or whatever, like and graded or whatever. So yeah, big difference. Then there was stuff that was kind of very interesting, like the order of the scenes. I kind of decided, I was like, oh, what if this happens at this time and this happens at this time, and kind of moving them around like that, because it's film, you guys. You can make it look like night if it's day. You can't make it look like day if it's night. But you can go the other way. So that was kind of interesting. I was like, what would happen if we did this here? And yeah, there was really cool stuff like that.
I think I'm used to having my darlings and other projects and other scripts, just because this particular short was very independently produced, that we had quite some like liberation, and that like any changes that came about were actually just kind of collaboratively making it sharper. Like when you're talking there about the alternative like endings for your film, Ashley, about like the kind of wrap up in the bow option, it's kind of reminded me of like one of the key bits of like advice. I think it was like Russell T Davies or somebody had said it, like, oh, usually the last line in the scene you don't need, like you can cut that last line usually. And it kind of just reminds me exactly what you're saying with the kind of tied up in the bow end, because you can leave the audience saying what the tied up in the bow end is, as opposed to saying it back to them. And I guess that like I was kind of thinking of like some of the chops and changes in the script that came around or in the story to what it is now were actually just collaboratively like, oh, we can cut this, we don't need this, and things like that. But usually I have to kill my darlings in other projects. No. You just but in the best way, because obviously it's keeping it like lean and stuff. I mean, then at the same time, like I do fight true to something like that I truly believe in for the story and all that as well. But yeah, for this, it was thankfully just the upside of the independent side was that it was quite nothing.
And you were your own funder. You were the person making the fiscal call. So at the end of the day, you were the producer. So you got to go on the top of the food chain for cuts, I guess, like while respecting other people's artistic vision. Yeah,
but like I mean, sorry to. But at the same time, your main currency is like just people's goodwill, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, and like it was kind of because it was personal financial hits on this one, like for myself and Shane. Like we in the end I was the first AD as well, and I've never first AD'd before, and I have to say I have such respect for that job. Oh my god, like that is so, like, honestly, hats off to first ADs. I don't think they get enough rap on like how much of a stellar amount of work they do. But yeah, like, because it was kind of the match of goodwill exactly of the islanders and people out to help you, and it's like, right, okay, how can we achieve this, like, and it's like, oh sure, as you say, like, as you said yourself, Gemma, like, she's handed us the keys to her house signed, we've just saved ourselves like this budget. And that happened a lot, like, and with like even vehicles for the crews, equipment and all that, like, yeah, it was very much like, it's interesting looking at like Martin McDonagh's like Banshees of Inisherin, like out down by your end, Grace, and all, like, because I think that in those kind of like rural island communities, you need the support. It doesn't, like, even when it goes to bigger budgets, you need the support of those, like, especially rural, like, harder to get to areas, because the locals are going to really just make your life easier and just make and become part of the process too.
God. And I could talk to you for so long, but I'm just so aware that we've just kept going. So look, thank you guys so much. If you could just let us know again when your film is screening, just so people can make sure to get their tickets. I'll start with you, Shannon.
Yeah, perfect. So License for Nil, if you're in for a bit of a laugh at the Fleadh, is on at the Town Hall in Galway on Thursday the 13th of July at 12 noon.
Amazing. And Grace?
Waiting Day is on the 15th of July at 12 o'clock in the Town Hall Theatre.
Brilliant. And Aisling?
And Misread, along with its new ending, will be in the Town Hall Theatre at 10 a.m. on the Friday as part of Irish Shorts 4, co-directed by myself and Sinead O'Loughlin. And a final shout out to Daniel, our leading actor, is nominated for a Bingham Ray Award for Emerging Talent. So just to give him a shout out, one of Ireland's most exciting acting talents at the moment. He'll get loads of jobs off the back of it, I hope.
That's it. And rising tides, then you'll get more screenings. That'll be brilliant. Poor eyes. Well, thank you guys so much for chatting. It was just so wonderful to see such an array of beautiful, really well put together films, and some brilliant writing, great performances. What a joy. So everyone definitely get those tickets. Thank you so much.